shattered amber light spilled through the volcanic glass corridors of Jareem's fortress, casting fractured shadows across the cold stone floor. Luther Hayes awoke to the familiar but unsettling sensation of neural shackles binding his consciousness, the distinctive crawling pressure at the base of his skull telling him he was no longer aboard the Starlight, but held captive in enemy territory. The harsh desert planet of Jareem was home to the Amber Warlords, a feline warrior species whose civilization had evolved from predatory instincts into a complex military hierarchy. As chief medical officer of Earth's fleet, Luther had studied their physiology extensively, but never expected to witness it firsthand. Certainly, not while restrained in what appeared to be a high-security medical chamber deep within their stronghold. His vision cleared slowly, the after-effects of the stun weapon still clouding his perception. The chamber's walls gleamed with volcanic glass, reinforced with some alien alloy he couldn't identify. Medical equipment, some recognizably similar to human technology, others completely foreign, lined the walls. The room was eerily silent, except for the labored breathing coming from the surgical table at the center. There, illuminated by shafts of crystalline amber light, lay Scylla, the infamous Amber Warlord herself. Her massive frame, typically imposing and regal in battle armor, now looked vulnerable. Her golden fur was matted with sweat, and her breathing came in ragged gasps. Even in this weakened state, she was magnificent, 8 feet of evolved predator, muscles still defined beneath her ceremonial covering. Luther's medical training immediately kicked in. Her pupils were dilated to pinpoints, her breathing shallow and irregular. The veins visible beneath her short fur had taken on a sickly green tinge, classic signs of advanced biotoxin poisoning. Without immediate treatment, she would be dead within hours. "You are awake, human healer." The voice came from behind him, deep and resonant. Luther tried to turn, but found his restraints prevented much movement. A towering figure stepped into his field of vision, General Vorak, Scylla's second-in-command. Unlike Scylla's golden coat, Vorak's fur was a deep russet, almost blood-red in the amber light. His ceremonial armor bore the marks of countless battles, and his eyes held nothing but contempt. "We captured you 3 cycles ago during the raid on the medical transport," Vorak continued. "Your reputation precedes you, Luther Hayes. They say you can heal what others cannot." Luther's throat was dry, but he managed to speak. "What happened to her?" "Poison," Vorak said simply. "An assassination attempt. Our healers have failed. She dies slowly." "And you want me to save her?" Luther asked, his mind racing through possibilities. "Why would I help the Amber Warlord who's killed hundreds of my people?" Vorak's lips pulled back in what might have been a smile, revealing rows of perfectly maintained predator teeth. "Because if she dies, you die, but much more slowly. And because you are a healer, it is your nature." The general moved toward the door, pausing before exiting. "Captain Kalen will monitor your progress. You have until the 3rd moon rises to produce results." As Vorak departed, a slighter figure emerged from the shadows. Captain Kalen, clearly recognized by the distinctive scar running from her left eye to jaw. Her silver-streaked fur suggested greater age than her agile movements indicated. "The shackles will be adjusted to allow you limited movement within this chamber," she said, her voice surprisingly soft. "All medical equipment is at your disposal. Attempt to escape or harm our warlord further, and your death will be instructive to others." With that, she tapped something on her wrist device. The neural pressure at Luther's skull receded slightly, allowing him to move his arms and legs, though his mind still felt foggy, a safeguard to prevent him from using any weapons or communications devices. Luther rose unsteadily to his feet, immediately moving to Scylla's side. Professional instinct overrode his fear and resentment. This was a patient, enemy or not, and he had sworn an oath that transcended political boundaries. Up close, the symptoms were even more alarming. The Amber Warlord's impressive physique was deteriorating rapidly. The biotoxin was systemically attacking her major organs, breaking down cellular walls and disrupting neural pathways. Luther recognized the pattern. A human-engineered bioweapon specifically designed to target the Amber species' unique physiology. This wasn't a random assassination attempt. This was something far worse. As Luther began examining her more thoroughly, Siller's eyes suddenly fluttered open. Unlike her subordinate's slit-pupilled stare, her eyes were a startling amber that matched her title: intelligent, fierce, and now clouded with pain. "Human," she rasped, her voice once capable of roaring commands across battlefields now barely audible. "Have you come to watch me die?" "No," Luther replied, continuing his examination. "Apparently, I've been brought here to prevent that." She attempted a laugh that dissolved into a racking cough. "Ironic. Our last meeting, I had your medical station in my weapon sights." "Kepler Station," Luther nodded, recalling the brutal battle that had resulted in hundreds of casualties on both sides. "I remember." "You refused to leave your patients," she said, studying him with those remarkable eyes. "Even when your own people retreated. I ordered my warriors to spare your medical bay." Luther paused, surprised. He had always wondered why the Amber forces had bypassed the vulnerable medical station during the final assault. That was unexpected mercy. "Not mercy," she growled. "Respect. We may be enemies, but we understand honor. Now tell me, healer, can you save me, or should I prepare for the final hunt?" Luther completed his initial assessment before answering. The poison was sophisticated, targeting multiple systems simultaneously, with a particularly devastating effect on her nervous system and bone marrow. Conventional treatments would be useless. "I can try," he said finally. "But I need to know exactly what we're dealing with. How long since you were exposed?" 2 cycles, she managed. "During the council gathering, I felt it immediately, a sting at my neck. Our healers slowed its progress but could not stop it." Luther frowned. 2 cycles and you're still alive? That's remarkable." A ghost of pride flickered across her face. "We are not easy to kill, human." "Evidently not." Luther moved to the medical equipment, familiarizing himself with the alien technology. Much of it was adapted from stolen human designs, modified for Amber physiology. He could work with this. "I need blood and tissue samples," he said, reaching for what appeared to be a sampling device. Captain Kalin stepped forward immediately. "You will explain each procedure before performing it." Luther nodded. "The poison is destroying her from within, particularly her bone marrow and nervous system. I need to analyze exactly what we're dealing with before I can formulate a treatment plan." Kalin hesitated, then nodded. "Proceed, but know that every moment of her suffering will be repaid in kind if you fail." Luther ignored the threat and got to work. Over the next several hours, he ran every diagnostic test available, analyzing the compound breaking down Siller's impressive physiology. The Warlord drifted in and out of consciousness, occasionally awakening to find Luther still working tirelessly at her side. "Your dedication is unexpected," she murmured during one such moment of lucidity. Luther didn't look up from the microscope-like device he was using. "I'm a doctor before I'm a soldier. Always have been." "Doctor," she repeated the word carefully. "Your people's term for healer. You follow this healing code even for enemies." "Especially for enemies," Luther replied, finally meeting her gaze. "Otherwise, what separates us from the darkness we're fighting against?" Something shifted in her amber eyes. Respect, perhaps, or simple curiosity. She said nothing more but watched him work until unconsciousness claimed her again. By the time Jareem's artificial third moon rose, casting eerie blue light through the high windows. Luther had his answer, and it wasn't good. The poison was unlike anything he'd encountered before, a hybrid bioweapon that seemed specifically engineered to target Siller's unique genetic makeup. This wasn't a standard assassination attempt. This was an inside job by someone with access to her genetic profile. More disturbing still, Luther recognized elements of the toxin's structure. It contained modified components from Earth Fleet's classified research, projects he himself had consulted on years ago. This poison couldn't have been created without access to secure Earth medical databases. Luther's mind raced. Either Earth had secretly supplied this bioweapon to Amber insurgents, or someone was playing both sides against each other. Either way, Siller's death would likely trigger a massive retaliation against human settlements. Captain Kalen returned as promised. "Your time is up, human healer. What have you discovered?" Luther straightened, his back aching from hours hunched over equipment. "I know what's killing her, and I know how to counteract it, theoretically." Kalen's ears flattened against her skull. "Explain." "It's a tailored bioweapon, made specifically for her. It's attacking her bone marrow, preventing new blood cell production while simultaneously destroying existing cells. But the poison has a weakness. It can be neutralized by specific antibodies." "Then produce these antibodies," Kalen demanded. Luther shook his head. "It's not that simple. The antibodies need to be generated from compatible living tissue with similar enough genetic markers, but different enough to produce an immune response. Among your people, it would require a direct blood relative, which I'm guessing she doesn't have, or she'd already be receiving treatment." Kalen's silence confirmed his assumption. "There is one other possibility," Luther continued carefully. "Human bone marrow, specifically mine, might be different enough to trigger antibody production, but similar enough on a basic cellular level to be compatible. We share more biological commonalities than either of our species likes to admit." "You would donate your bone marrow?" Kalen asked, clearly unfamiliar with the procedure. "Yes, it's painful but survivable. But here's the problem. The neural shackles you've placed on me prevent the procedure. They interfere with my nervous system, which would compromise the viability of the marrow." Kalen's eyes narrowed. "You expect us to remove your restraints? Do you think us fools?" "I expect you to want your leader to live," Luther replied evenly. "And I'm telling you, this is the only way." "Or perhaps you've simply engineered a plot for escape," she hissed. Luther gestured to the dying warlord. "Look at her. 6 more hours, maybe less, and she'll be beyond saving. Are you willing to take that chance?" Kalen paced the chamber, tail lashing in agitation. Finally, she activated her communication device. "General Vorak, your presence is required immediately." When Vorak arrived, his imposing frame seeming to fill the small medical chamber, Kalen explained Luther's proposal. The general's expression remained unreadable as he considered the human doctor. "If I remove these restraints and you attempt escape or deception, I will personally ensure that your death spans days," Vorak said, voice deceptively calm. "Understood," Luther replied. "But there's something else you should know. This poison, it contains elements that could only have come from Earth Fleet medical databases. Someone with high-level access supplied the assassin." Vorak and Kalen exchanged a quick glance that Luther couldn't interpret. "That is a matter for after our warlord's recovery," Vorak said dismissively. "Proceed with your treatment, human." Luther took a deep breath. "There's one more thing. I'll need surgical assistance. The procedure is difficult to perform on oneself." To his surprise, it was Kalen who stepped forward. "I have studied your human medical practices. I will assist." Vorak gestured to the neural shackle controls. "The restraints will be deactivated, but be warned, at the first sign of treachery. Kalen has orders to end you." Luther nodded grimly. "Then let's begin." The sensation of the neural shackles deactivating was immediate, like a fog lifting from his mind. Luther rolled his shoulders, feeling his full cognitive abilities return. He moved quickly to prepare the necessary equipment, knowing Siller had precious little time left. "I'll need to extract healthy bone marrow and process it to create a serum that will stimulate her immune system to produce the necessary antibodies," he explained as he worked. Normally, this would be done with specialized equipment, but we'll have to improvise. As Luther set up the makeshift procedure, he noted something odd about Kalen's behavior. The captain's eyes constantly darted between him and the door, and she positioned herself between Luther and Vorak at every opportunity. There was something happening here beyond what was being said. The extraction process would be excruciating without proper anesthesia, but Luther had no choice. He prepared a local numbing agent, all that was available, and guided Kalen through the assistant's role. "The needle needs to penetrate the posterior iliac crest, here," he explained, indicating the area on his own hip. "Then, we'll extract approximately 500 milliliters of marrow." Kalen's eyes widened. "That much? Will it not harm you?" "It'll hurt like hell and weaken me for a while, but I'll survive," Luther replied, trying to sound more confident than he felt. "Once extracted, I'll need to process it immediately and transfuse it directly into Siller's bloodstream." The procedure began with Vorak watching intently from the doorway. The pain, despite the local anesthetic, was blinding. Luther bit down on a piece of cloth to keep from screaming as Kalen extracted the precious marrow, her hands surprisingly steady. Halfway through the extraction, Luther noticed General Vorak's expression change. The general checked his communication device, frowned, and then exited the chamber without explanation, leaving Kalen alone with Luther. The moment Vorak was gone, Kalen leaned in close. "Listen carefully, human. There isn't much time." Luther, dazed with pain, struggled to focus on her words. "Vorak is behind the poisoning," she whispered, continuing the extraction without pause. "He and several high-ranking officers planned this to seize control. I've been gathering evidence, but I need more time." "Why tell me this?" Luther gasped as the needle hit a particularly sensitive spot. "Because you've proven yourself honorable, and because we need allies. Vorak has been communicating with someone in your Earth fleet, exchanging medical data for weapons technology. If Siller dies, he plans to blame humans and launch a full-scale war." Luther's mind raced despite the pain. "The poison. It contained elements from Earth research." "Yes, provided by your people to Vorak. This goes beyond our two species. Someone wants this war to happen." Before Luther could respond, they heard footsteps approaching. Kalen immediately resumed her previous demeanor, barking orders as though nothing had transpired between them. The extraction finally complete. Luther worked frantically to process the marrow into a viable treatment. His medical training took over, hands moving automatically despite his weakened state. Blood loss and pain threatened to overwhelm him, but he pushed through, knowing failure meant death, not just for Siller, but potentially for millions on both sides if war erupted. The final serum, a cloudy reddish liquid, represented Luther's best hope. He administered it intravenously to the unconscious Warlord, monitoring her vital signs closely for any reaction. "How long?" Kalen demanded, maintaining her hostile facade. "If it works, we should see improvement within hours," Luther replied, his voice weak. "Her system needs to recognize the foreign cells and produce antibodies without rejecting the marrow completely. It's a delicate balance." Vorak returned, his expression thunderous. "Captain, you're needed in the command center immediately. Secure the human and come at once." Kalen hesitated, glancing at Luther, who was barely conscious himself from the procedure. "He's no threat in this condition," she said. "The neural restraints would only interfere with monitoring the Warlord's response to treatment." Vorak growled but didn't argue. "Very well, but if he attempts anything, I'll hold you personally responsible." After they departed, Luther dragged himself to Siller's bedside, checking her vital signs again. The serum would take time to work, time they might not have if Kalen's information was correct. He needed to find evidence of Vorek's betrayal and the Earth Fleet connection. Pushing through his exhaustion, Luther began searching the medical database on the Chamber's computer terminal. His medical clearance, surprisingly still active, gave him access to recent treatment records. There, buried among routine medical data, he found it. Evidence of Vorak accessing Siller's genetic profile multiple times in the weeks before the poisoning, and communications logs with an encrypted external source. Luther downloaded the information to a small medical data chip, concealing it in the lining of his uniform boot. Now he needed a way to communicate with his ship, assuming the Starlight was still in orbit, searching for their missing chief medical officer. A soft groan from the table interrupted his thoughts. Siller was awake, her amber eyes clearer than they had been since his arrival. "What have you done, human?" she asked, her voice stronger. Luther returned to her side. "Hopefully saved your life. How do you feel?" "Like I've been trampled by a herd of Jarimin sand beasts," she replied, attempting to sit up before falling back weakly. "But the burning in my veins has lessened. Your treatment?" "Bone marrow transplant," Luther explained, showing her the extraction site on his hip. "My body's ability to produce certain antibodies seems compatible with your system." Siller's eyes widened. "You gave your own marrow, knowing I would kill you without hesitation in battle?" "We're not in battle now," Luther replied simply. "And there are bigger concerns. Your General Vorak, he's the one who poisoned you." To his surprise, Siller didn't immediately dismiss the accusation. "Explain." Luther quickly outlined what he'd discovered and what Kalen had revealed. "If Vorak succeeds in eliminating you and blaming humans, the war will escalate beyond anything we've seen." Siller's eyes narrowed to dangerous slits. "Kalen has suspected Vorak's ambitions for some time, but proof has been elusive. This communication with your Earth fleet, you found evidence." "Yes, but it's encrypted. I can't tell who the human contact is without better equipment." Siller attempted to rise again, this time succeeding with Luther's assistance. She swayed momentarily, then steadied herself, impressive even in her weakened state. "Then we must obtain this equipment," she said with the absolute authority of someone accustomed to command. "And we must move quickly. If Vorak suspects you've discovered his treachery, he will eliminate us both." "You believe me?" Luther asked, surprised by her trust. "You cut open your own body to save mine," she replied simply. "That earns you the right to be heard. Besides, I have suspected Vorak's loyalty has been compromised since the Meridian campaign. His strategies have become questionable." The door slid open suddenly, revealing Captain Kalen in obvious distress. "Warlord, you're awake. Praise the ancestors. But we must move immediately. Vorak has ordered your medical stasis, claiming your mind has been compromised by the poison." "Stasis would kill her in her current condition," Luther interjected. "Her system is too fragile." "Exactly," Kalen said grimly. "That's his intention. He's called an emergency council meeting to transfer command authority while you're recovering. Once that happens, he'll ensure you never wake up." Siller's reaction was immediate and predatory. Despite her weakness, her posture transformed, muscles tensing as though prepared to spring. "How many warriors stand with him?" "At least 30, including most of the elite guard. Those loyal to you have been dispatched to the outer perimeter on false security concerns." Luther watched the exchange with growing alarm. "We need to get you both to safety and contact my ship. If we can identify Vorek's human collaborator, we might prevent war." Siller turned to him, those amber eyes calculating. "Your ship still orbits Jarim?" "The Starlight wouldn't leave without confirmation of my death," Luther said confidently. Captain Mira follows protocols, but she wouldn't abandon crew without exhausting all options. Then we have a destination, Siller declared. Kalen, secure us a path to the southern launch bay. We'll take my personal shuttle. Impossible, Kalen responded immediately. The main corridors are all watched. Even with your authority, we'd be intercepted before reaching the bay. A ghost of a smile crossed Siller's face, the first Luther had seen from the fearsome Warlord. Who said anything about main corridors? The ancient tunnels beneath the fortress will serve us better. Luther helped Siller to her feet, supporting her weight as she struggled to maintain her balance. The Warlord was healing, but far too slowly to fight her way out of this situation. They would need stealth and speed, neither of which seemed possible given her condition. I'll need weapons, Luther said, surprising himself with the request. As a medical officer, he rarely carried anything more dangerous than a scalpel. Kalen assessed him with newfound respect before retrieving a sidearm from a hidden compartment in her armor. Can you use this? Luther accepted the alien weapon, familiarizing himself with its configuration. Reluctantly, but yes. Kalen led them to what appeared to be a solid wall at the rear of the medical chamber. She pressed a specific sequence on her wrist device, revealing a hidden passage that opened silently into darkness. These tunnels date back to the first settlement, she explained. Few remember they exist. They will take us beneath the fortress to an exit near the southern perimeter. The passage was narrow and low-ceilinged, forcing the tall amber warriors to hunch uncomfortably. Luther supported Siller, concerned by her labored breathing and the heat radiating from her body. The marrow transplant was working, but fighting the poison had taken a tremendous toll. You should leave me, Siller said suddenly as they navigated the dark tunnel. I slow your escape. Not an option, Luther replied firmly. The treatment isn't complete. Without continued medical supervision, you could still die. Always the healer, she murmured, but allowed him to continue supporting her. They moved through the ancient passageways for what felt like hours, the air growing increasingly stale. Finally, Kalen halted before an ancient mechanical door. Beyond this lies the southern approach to the launch bay, she whispered. But we must cross open ground. Vorak will have posted guards. Luther checked Siller's condition. Her fever had intensified, and her movements were becoming increasingly uncoordinated. Signs her nervous system was still under attack despite the treatment. She needs another dose of the serum, he said. And soon. Kalen's expression was grim. The necessary equipment is in the medical chamber we left behind. Luther thought quickly. The shuttle, does it have medical capabilities? Basic emergency equipment only, Kalen replied. It will have to do. We need to get her aboard immediately. Kalen activated her wrist display, revealing a real-time security feed of the exterior grounds. 4 guards patrolled the open area between their position and the launch bay. I'll create a diversion, Kalen said after studying the pattern. When they move to investigate, take the Warlord directly to her shuttle. The access code is her clan sequence. She can provide it. And you? Luther asked. I'll join you if possible. If not. Kalen removed a data crystal from her armor and pressed it into Luther's hand. This contains all the evidence I've gathered against Vorak, including partial decryption of his communications with your Earth contact. Ensure it reaches those who can act upon it. Before Luther could protest, Kalen slipped through the door and disappeared into the shadows of the compound. Moments later, an explosion rocked the northern section of the perimeter, followed by alarm signals and the sound of running feet as the guards abandoned their posts to investigate. Now, Luther urged, half carrying Siller through the door and across the exposed ground toward the launch bay. Her massive frame, though lighter than it appeared, still strained his already weakened body to its limits. They reached the shuttle bay without incident, the security systems recognizing Siller's biometric signature, despite her compromised condition. The sleek vessel before them was smaller than Luther had expected, clearly designed for speed rather than comfort. The access sequence, Luther prompted as they reached the entry panel. Scylla pressed her palm against the scanner, her voice barely audible as she spoke in the ancient Amber language. The hatch opened immediately, revealing a compact but well-equipped interior. Luther helped her aboard, immediately searching for the medical equipment Kalen had mentioned. He found a basic emergency kit, primitive by his standards, but sufficient to create a temporary stabilizing solution. As he worked, Scylla dragged herself to the pilot's position. "I can fly us out, but not far in this condition. We need to contact your ship." Luther finished preparing a makeshift serum from the emergency supplies and administered it to Scylla before moving to the communications array. "The Starlight should be monitoring all frequencies. If I can bypass the fortress's communication jamming..." He worked quickly, repurposing components from the shuttle's secondary systems to boost the signal strength. Years of emergency field medicine had taught him improvisation that went well beyond standard medical training. A sudden commotion outside drew his attention. Through the viewport, he could see Kalen running toward the shuttle, pursued by at least 6 Amber warriors in full battle armor. Behind them, imposing and terrible, came General Vorak himself. "We need to leave now," Luther urged, completing the final connections on the communications array. Scylla activated the shuttle's engines, her movements clumsy but determined. "Open the bay doors." Luther found the controls and initiated the launch sequence. The massive doors began to slide apart, revealing Jareem's rust-colored sky beyond. Outside, Kalen had reached the edge of the launch platform. With a desperate leap, she hurled herself toward the slowly rising shuttle. Luther reached out, grabbing her outstretched hand and pulling her aboard just as weapon fire erupted from below. The shuttle rocked as energy blasts impacted its hull, but Scylla's piloting skills, even compromised, were impressive. She navigated the vessel through the narrow bay doors and into open sky, accelerating rapidly away from the fortress. "They'll send pursuit craft," Kalen gasped, bleeding from a wound in her side where an energy blast had grazed her. "We have minutes at most." Luther turned his attention to the communications array he'd constructed. "This is Chief Medical Officer Luther Hayes of the Earth Fleet vessel Starlight, broadcasting on all emergency frequencies. Captain Mira, if you can hear this, we require immediate extraction. Authentication code Hayes Gamma 739. Static answered him, and Luther feared the worst, that the Starlight had indeed abandoned orbit after his disappearance. Then, miraculously, the static cleared. "Dr. Hayes, by all the stars, we've been searching for you for 3 cycles." Captain Mira's voice came through, filled with disbelief and relief. "We're tracking your signal now. Be advised, we're detecting multiple pursuit vessels launching from the surface." "We have the Amber Warlord aboard," Luther replied urgently. "She's been poisoned. An inside job connected to someone within Earth Fleet. We have evidence of conspiracy to trigger interspecies war. Request immediate rendezvous and security detail upon arrival." A moment of stunned silence followed before Mira responded. "Understood. Altering course to intercept. Security will be waiting. Starlight out." The shuttle shuddered as the first energy blasts from the pursuit craft found their mark. Scylla growled, executing evasive maneuvers that strained the small vessel's capabilities. "Your ship, how far?" she demanded. Luther checked the navigational display. "At current velocity. Intercept in 7 minutes." "We may not have 7 minutes," Kalen warned, moving to the weapons console despite her injury. 6 pursuit craft, heavily armed. Luther turned his attention to Scylla, noting with alarm that her condition was deteriorating again. The makeshift serum wasn't enough. The stress of piloting was accelerating the poison's effects. Her massive hands trembled on the controls, and her breathing had become alarmingly shallow. "Let me take over," he urged. "You need to rest." "You can pilot an Amber shuttle?" she asked skeptically. "The basics aren't that different from our medical transport vessels," Luther replied with more confidence than he felt. "And you'll be no use to anyone if you collapse before we reach the Starlight." After a moment's hesitation, Scylla relinquished the controls. Luther took her position, quickly familiarizing himself with the alien configuration. The pursuit craft were gaining, their weapons finding the shuttle with increasing accuracy. "Kalen, can you get any more power to the shields?" Luther called over his shoulder. "Rerouting emergency systems now," she replied, her fingers dancing across the alien console. The shuttle lurched as another blast struck their aft section. Warning indicators flashed across the control panel. Their primary propulsion system was failing. "Starlight, we're taking heavy fire," Luther transmitted. "Primary engines compromised. Request immediate assistance." "Hold course, Dr. Hayes," Mira responded. "We're launching interceptors now." Luther pushed the damaged shuttle to its limits, following the trajectory indicated on the navigation system. Through the viewport, he could see the faint outline of the Starlight growing larger against the starfield. Behind them, the pursuit craft continued their relentless attack, closing the distance with each passing moment. The shuttle's shields were failing, and the next direct hit could be catastrophic. "There!" Kalen pointed ahead. Small, agile craft had launched from the Starlight and were racing toward their position. Earth fleet interceptors coming to their aid. The relief was short-lived, as the shuttle's engines sputtered and died completely. They were drifting now, still moving toward the Starlight on momentum alone, but increasingly vulnerable to the pursuing amber vessels. "Starlight, we've lost all propulsion," Luther reported. "We're drifting." "Understood. Maintain current vector. Interceptors will provide cover. Prepare for emergency tractor beam lock." The interceptors engaged the pursuit craft, their superior speed and maneuverability evident as they drew enemy fire away from the crippled shuttle. Energy weapons crisscrossed the void around them in a deadly light show. Luther moved back to check on Scylla, finding her semi-conscious and burning with fever. The poison was resurging. She needed proper medical treatment immediately. "Stay with me, Warlord," he urged, administering the last of the makeshift serum. "We're almost there." Her amber eyes flickered open, focusing on him with effort. "Why do you care so deeply for an enemy's survival, human?" "Because saving lives is more important than taking them," Luther replied. "And because I think you might be the only one who can prevent this war." A faint smile touched her features. "Perhaps. We are not so different after all." The shuttle shuddered violently as something locked onto their hull. For a moment, Luther feared one of the pursuit craft had attached itself, but the familiar sensation of a tractor beam soon reassured him. The Starlight had them. "We're bringing you in, Dr. Hayes," Mira's voice came through. "Medical team standing by in the main hangar." As the shuttle was drawn into the Starlight's hangar bay, Luther caught his first glimpse of home through the viewport. The familiar white and blue of Earth Fleet uniforms as personnel rushed to secure the area. Security officers formed a perimeter around where the shuttle would land, weapons at the ready. "They'll try to separate us," Scylla warned, her voice weak but determined. "Do not let them take the evidence." "I won't," Luther promised. "But my first priority is getting you to medical bay. The poison is still active in your system." The shuttle settled onto the hangar deck with a gentle thud. Almost immediately, the hatch was forced open from outside, and security personnel flooded in, weapons trained on the Amber Warriors. "Dr. Hayes," Commander Wilson, head of security, called out. "Are you injured?" "I'm fine, but the Warlord needs immediate medical attention," Luther replied, stepping between the security team and Scylla. "And Captain Kalen is wounded as well." Wilson hesitated, clearly torn between protocols and Luther's medical authority. "Sir, regulations require enemy combatants to be secured before—" "They're not combatants. They're patients," Luther interrupted firmly. "And this is a medical emergency. I'm invoking CMO override. Get me a transport to medical bay now." To emphasize his point, Luther removed the data crystal Kalen had given him. "And this needs to go directly to Captain Mira. It contains evidence of conspiracy involving someone in Earth Fleet High Command. Wilson's eyes widened, but his training prevailed. He dispatched 2 officers to retrieve a medical transport while maintaining the security perimeter. "Dr. Hayes!" a familiar voice called from the hangar entrance. Dr. Eliza Chen, Luther's assistant CMO, rushed forward with a medical team. "We thought you were dead." "Nearly was," Luther replied, relief washing over him at the sight of his medical team. "But we have more urgent concerns. The Amber Warlord has been poisoned with a modified version of Project Helix." Chen's expression shifted from joy to shock. "Project Helix? But that's classified Earthfleet research." "Exactly. Someone's been sharing our medical databases with the enemy. We need to neutralize the poison and keep her alive until we can determine who." The medical transport arrived, and Luther supervised the careful transfer of Siller's massive frame onto it. Kaylin refused treatment until her Warlord was secured, standing guard despite her own wound. As they moved through the Starlight's corridors toward Medical Bay, Luther noticed the suspicious and fearful glances from the crew they passed. The presence of the infamous Amber Warlord aboard an Earth vessel was unprecedented, a potential diplomatic incident of the highest order. Captain Mira met them at the Medical Bay entrance, her usually composed features tight with concern. "Dr. Hayes, I need an explanation, and I need it now." Luther handed her the data crystal. "This contains evidence that General Vorak of the Amber Forces conspired with someone in Earth Fleet Command to assassinate Warlord Siller and trigger full-scale war. I've administered emergency treatment, but she needs comprehensive care to survive." Mira studied him for a long moment, then nodded sharply. "Proceed with treatment. I'll review this evidence immediately. Security will remain posted, but they won't interfere with medical procedures." "Thank you, Captain," Luther said, relief evident in his voice. "Don't thank me yet," Mira replied grimly. "If what you're suggesting is true, we're all in grave danger. Vorak will claim we've kidnapped their leader. Earth Command will demand I turn her over. This could still end very badly." "Then we'd better work quickly," Luther said, turning to follow his patient into Medical Bay. The next several hours were a blur of intense medical activity. Luther, despite his own exhaustion and the lingering effects of the bone marrow extraction, worked tirelessly alongside Dr. Chen to synthesize a more effective antidote. With the Starlight's advanced medical equipment, they were able to isolate the specific compounds in the biotoxin and develop targeted countermeasures. Throughout the procedure, Kaylin remained at Siller's side, her posture alert despite her own treated wound. The loyalty she displayed toward her Warlord was impressive, even by Earth Fleet standards. "Will she survive?" Kaylin asked, as Luther administered the newly synthesized treatment. "I believe so," Luther replied, monitoring Siller's vital signs as the antidote entered her system. "Her physiology is remarkable. Most species would have succumbed to this poison within hours." "She is Amber Warlord for good reason," Kaylin said, a note of pride in her voice. "Many have tried to claim her title through challenge. None have succeeded." Luther studied the captain curiously. "Yet, Vorak chose poison rather than challenge. Why?" "Because he knew he would fail," Kaylin replied simply. "In direct combat, none can match her. But more importantly, most warriors remain loyal to her. Vorak needed her dead by natural causes to avoid suspicion." Their conversation was interrupted as Captain Mira entered Medical Bay, her expression grave. "Dr. Hayes, we have a situation. 3 Amber warships have entered orbit and are demanding the return of their Warlord. They're claiming we kidnapped her in a raid." Luther frowned. "That's absurd. We have Kaylin's testimony and the evidence. Evidence that implicates Admiral Harrington of Earth Fleet Central Command." Mira interrupted, her voice low. "I've reviewed the data crystal. The encrypted communications were between Vorak and Harrington. They've been planning this for months." Luther felt the blood drain from his face. Admiral Harrington was one of the most respected leaders in the fleet, responsible for military strategy across 3 sectors. "Does Earth Command know?" he asked. "I've transmitted the evidence through secure channels to General Satoshi, Harrington's superior, and the only person I trust with this information. But until he acts, we're on our own. Harrington has already issued orders for us to surrender the Amber hostages to a fleet detention vessel en route. If we do that, Siller and Kalen will never reach Earth alive," Luther said with certainty. "Agreed," Mira nodded. "Which is why we need the Warlord conscious and able to communicate with her fleet. Only she has the authority to stand down those warships." Luther checked Siller's vital signs again. The antidote was working. Her system was beginning to stabilize, and the neural indicators were showing improvement. "I can bring her around briefly," he said. "But it will tax her system. She needs at least 12 more hours of treatment to fully neutralize the poison." "We don't have 12 hours," Mira said grimly. "Harrington's detention vessel will arrive in 4, and the Amber warships are threatening to open fire in 2 if we don't establish proof of life." Luther nodded reluctantly and prepared a stimulant appropriate for Amber physiology. As he administered it, he monitored Siller's neural patterns carefully, ready to intervene if the stimulant triggered any adverse reactions. Slowly, the Warlord's eyes opened, those remarkable amber irises focusing first on Luther, then widening as she recognized her surroundings. "Human vessel," she murmured, her voice hoarse but stronger than before. "The Starlight," Luther confirmed. "You're in our medical bay. The antidote is working, but you need more time to recover fully." Siller attempted to sit up, and this time succeeded with minimal assistance. Her gaze fell on Captain Mira, assessing the human commander with the practiced eye of a fellow warrior. "You are this vessel's leader," she stated, rather than asked. Mira stepped forward, maintaining a respectful distance. "Captain Mira of the Earth Fleet vessel Starlight, Warlord Siller, we have a situation that requires your attention." Briefly and succinctly, Mira outlined their predicament, the approaching Amber warships, Harrington's betrayal, and the detention vessel en route. Siller listened without interruption, her expression unreadable. When Mira finished, the Warlord turned to Kalen. "The evidence against Vorak is secure?" "Yes, Warlord," Kalen confirmed. "And the human doctor has successfully treated the poison. Your recovery proceeds well." Siller nodded, then returned her attention to Mira. "I require communication with my fleet." "We can arrange that," Mira replied. "But I need assurances they won't open fire once they confirm you're aboard." A hint of that predatory smile crossed Siller's features. "Captain, if I wished your vessel destroyed, I would simply remain silent and allow events to unfold. The fact that I'm willing to communicate should be assurance enough." Mira studied the Amber Warlord for a long moment before nodding. "Very well. I'll have communications set up a secure channel to your flagship." As Mira departed to make arrangements, Luther continued monitoring Siller's condition. The stimulant would keep her conscious for perhaps an hour before her system would require rest to continue healing. "You should know," he said quietly, "that continued stress could reactivate the poison. This communication is necessary, but dangerous to your recovery." Siller regarded him with those intelligent, amber eyes. "You continue to place my well-being above other concerns, even when your own life hangs in balance. A curious trait for a species we've long considered adversaries." "Maybe that's the problem," Luther suggested. "We've been so focused on our differences that we've ignored our similarities." Before Siller could respond, a communications terminal was wheeled into the medical bay. The screen flickered to life, displaying the bridge of an Amber warship and the concerned face of an Amber commander. "Warlord!" the commander exclaimed, relief evident even through the alien features. "We feared the worst when your shuttle disappeared. General Vorak claimed Earth forces had captured you during a raid." "Vorak lies," Siller replied, her voice assuming the unmistakable tone of command despite her weakened state. "He orchestrated an assassination attempt against me using poison, supplied by human conspirators. These humans," she gestured to Luther and the medical team, "provided treatment and sanctuary when our own forces were compromised." The commander appeared stunned. "This is difficult to believe. Warlord, Vorak has been your loyal second for many cycles. Loyalty is proven through actions, not time served," Siller replied sharply. "I have evidence of his treachery, which will be presented to the High Council upon my return. For now, you will stand down your weapons and maintain position. This vessel and its crew are under my protection." The commander hesitated, clearly torn between conflicting protocols. "Do you question my authority, Commander Razik?" Siller asked, a dangerous edge entering her voice. "No, Warlord," Razik replied immediately. "Never. We will comply and await further instructions." "Good. Inform the other vessels. I will contact you again when arrangements for my return have been finalized." The communication ended, and Siller sagged visibly, the brief exchange having drained her limited reserves. Luther moved quickly to administer a stabilizing agent, concerned by the fluctuations in her vital signs. "You need to rest now," he insisted. "The stimulant is putting too much strain on your system." Siller didn't argue, allowing Luther to help her recline on the medical bed. "You're Captain Mira. She still faces a difficult choice when the detention vessel arrives." "She'll make the right decision," Luther said with more confidence than he felt. "In the meantime, we need to focus on your recovery." The next few hours passed in tense preparation. Luther continued Siller's treatment, while Captain Mira made arrangements to deal with the approaching detention vessel. The Amber warships had backed off as ordered, but maintained position within visual range, a silent reminder of the precarious diplomatic situation. Luther was checking Siller's neural responses when Captain Mira returned to Medical Bay, accompanied by her first officer, Commander Jackson. "Doctor, we've received a priority communication from General Satoshi," Mira announced. "Admiral Harrington has been taken into custody, pending investigation. However, the detention vessel is still en route, now commanded by Captain Reynolds, one of Harrington's most loyal officers." "He won't stand down even with Harrington arrested?" Luther asked. "Unlikely," Mira replied grimly. "Reynolds has a reputation for creative interpretation of orders, and his last transmission suggested he doesn't believe the evidence against Harrington is legitimate." Luther glanced at Siller, who had regained consciousness and was listening intently. "What's your plan, Captain?" "We've been ordered to proceed to Earth with the Warlord and Captain Kalen as diplomatic guests," Mira explained. "General Satoshi wants to handle this situation personally, given its implications for Earth-Amber relations." "And the detention vessel?" Luther pressed. "Will attempt to intercept us before we can enter warp." Commander Jackson interjected. "They outgun us significantly." Siller stirred, drawing their attention. "My warships will prevent this interception." Mira looked alarmed. "With respect, Warlord, that would constitute an act of war." "Not if they merely escort us," Siller replied, that predatory smile returning briefly. "As a diplomatic courtesy." Luther watched the exchange with growing respect for the Amber leader's strategic thinking, even in her compromised state. "That could work," Mira admitted reluctantly. "But it would require precise coordination to avoid escalation." "My commanders understand precision," Siller assured her. "Allow me to communicate the arrangements." While Mira facilitated another communication with the Amber Fleet, Luther continued monitoring Siller's recovery. The antidote was working effectively now, her system gradually purging the remaining toxins. Another day of treatment, and she would be physically capable of returning to her duties. Though Luther suspected the political fallout from these events would be far more challenging to navigate than the medical crisis. The detention vessel appeared on long-range sensors 4 hours later, just as Siller was showing signs of significant improvement. As predicted, Captain Reynolds hailed the Starlight with demands to transfer custody of the Amber prisoners. Luther watched from medical bay as Captain Mira handled the confrontation with admirable composure. On the view screen, Reynolds' face twisted with barely contained fury as Mira explained the situation. "Captain Reynolds, I have direct orders from General Satoshi to proceed to Earth with our diplomatic guests," Mira stated firmly. "Diplomatic guests?" Reynolds scoffed. "You're harboring the military leader of our most dangerous enemy. Transfer the Amber combatants to my vessel immediately, or I'll be forced to take them by force." "That would be unwise," Mira replied calmly. "As you may have noticed, we have an escort." The camera view widened to reveal the 3 Amber warships that had moved into formation around the Starlight, their weapon systems conspicuously active. Reynolds' face paled visibly. "You've allied yourself with the enemy? This is treason, Mira." "The only treason here was committed by Admiral Harrington," Mira countered. "The evidence has been reviewed by General Satoshi himself. Stand down your vessel. Captain Reynolds, don't sacrifice your crew for a misplaced loyalty." The standoff lasted several tense minutes before Reynolds finally relented, though his parting words promised this matter was far from resolved. As the detention vessel altered course and departed, Luther felt a wave of relief wash over him. "Your captain handles herself well under pressure," Siller observed from her medical bed. "She would make a formidable Amber commander." Luther smiled tiredly. "I'll be sure to tell her you said so, though I'm not certain she'd take it as the compliment you intended." Siller's amber eyes studied him thoughtfully. "You humans are curious creatures, so physically fragile, yet capable of remarkable resilience. I have misjudged your species, I think, or at least some among you." "And I've misjudged yours," Luther admitted. "I always believed the stories that Amber warriors valued strength above all else, that compassion was seen as weakness." "For many, that is true," Siller acknowledged. "But the wisest among us understand that different kinds of strength exist. What you did, sacrificing your own body to save an enemy, that requires a courage few Amber warriors could claim." Luther checked her vital signs one last time, satisfied with the steady improvement. "Rest now. We have a long journey to Earth ahead of us, and you'll need your strength for the diplomatic challenges to come." As the Starlight prepared to enter warp, escorted by the Amber warships in an unprecedented show of cooperation, Luther finally allowed himself to rest. The events of the past days had changed everything: personal relationships, political alliances, and perhaps the future course of human-Amber relations. In the quiet of his private quarters, Luther reflected on the strange path that had led him here. As a medical officer, he had sworn to preserve life, all life, regardless of species or allegiance. That simple principle had now placed him at the center of an interstellar diplomatic incident with far-reaching implications. His door chime interrupted his thoughts. Opening it, he was surprised to find Captain Kalin standing outside, her posture formal, but her expression less severe than usual. "The Warlord requests your presence," she said without preamble. Luther followed her through the corridors of the Starlight to a secured guest quarters that had been prepared for Siller. Inside, the Amber Warlord sat in a specially reinforced chair, her impressive frame still dominating the space despite her recent illness. She had been provided with a simple version of her ceremonial garments, and the effect was striking, a perfect blend of warrior dignity and restrained power. "Dr. Hayes," she greeted him, gesturing to a seat opposite her. "Please join me." As Luther sat, he noticed a small ceremonial box on the table between them. Siller followed his gaze and smiled slightly. "In Amber tradition, life debts are not spoken of. They are acknowledged through action," she explained, opening the box to reveal a small, crystal pendant on a chain of some unfamiliar metallic alloy. This is crafted from the heartstone of my ancestral lands. It marks you as Kirja, life-bringer to my house. No amber warrior may raise hand against you while you bear this symbol. Luther was momentarily speechless at the significance of the gesture. I did only what any doctor would do. Siller's amber eyes glinted with amusement. We both know that is not true. You cut into your own flesh to save an enemy commander. You risked your career and life to expose conspiracy. These are not the actions of any doctor. She lifted the pendant and held it out to him. This marks the beginning of something new between our peoples. Luther Hayes. When we reach your Earth, I will propose a formal alliance, something that would have been unthinkable mere days ago. The path ahead will not be easy, but it is necessary. Luther accepted the pendant, feeling its surprising warmth against his palm. Thank you, Warlord. I'll wear it with honor. Siller, she corrected. Among those I trust, titles are unnecessary. As Luther departed, the pendant secured around his neck. He felt the weight of history shifting around him. One small act of compassion, the choice to see a patient rather than an enemy, had altered the course of two civilizations. The Starlight continued its journey toward Earth, flanked by amber warships in a formation that would have been considered impossible a week earlier. Within its hull, an unlikely alliance had been forged, not through treaties or political maneuvering, but through the simple, powerful act of one person choosing to save another's life. Standing at the observation port, Luther watched the stars streak by, the crystal pendant warm against his chest. Whatever challenges awaited at Earth, whatever political storms would rage around these events, one truth remained clear. Understanding began with compassion, and peace with the recognition of shared humanity, even when that humanity wore an alien face. As if sensing his thoughts, Siller joined him at the viewport, her imposing presence now a source of reassurance rather than threat. Together, the human doctor and the amber warlord stood in comfortable silence, watching the stars rush past. Two individuals from worlds apart, united by the most fundamental principle of all. Life, in all its forms, was worth preserving. The future, uncertain as it was, held new possibilities neither had imagined before their paths crossed. And in that uncertainty lay hope. Hope that others might learn what they had discovered through trial and sacrifice. That beneath the surface, differences of species and culture beat hearts capable of the same courage, loyalty, and compassion. It begins with us, Siller said quietly, as if reading his thoughts. But it does not end with us. Luther nodded, understanding the profound truth in her simple statement. This was merely the beginning of healing, of understanding, and perhaps of a peace that had once seemed impossible. And as the starlight carried them toward an uncertain reception on Earth, that beginning was enough.